Guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. It's all over but the crying. For you on here on YouTube, my last 3 videos have been demonetized for God knows what reasons. And so needless to say, YouTube is keeping all the money for the ads they're showing you. So if you would, please join me over on betterbachelor.locals.com where you get an ad-free experience and you can see my content in its entirety. And you can support me for like $4 or $5, depending if you do yearly or monthly. I would appreciate it because YouTube sucks. But I say it's all over with the crying, and then I'm going to whine for a couple seconds about how much I hate YouTube. But the reason I mention that is because I played my regular intro music over here on YouTube, but on Locals, I get to play It's All Over But the Crying by, is it the Ink Spots, I think, from Fallout 4, for a fun intro. But I can't do fun things on here on YouTube because I hate YouTube, and YouTube hates us content creators. So the quiet quitters, the people that got fed up with their jobs and decided to do the minimum amount of work, or the great resignation, all the people that said, I'm fed up with this, and that quit and went looking for other jobs, come to find out they all regret quiet quitting and bailing on their previous employers. Look, the truth of it is right now that corporations, because they can, the food corporations, gas corporations, electrical corporations, whatever, they can charge you an arm and a leg, and they'll say, oh, it's inflation. And it's also shrinkflation, where your portion size goes down and the price of the object goes up. And then, Exxon and these other oil companies are like, wow, record profits this year. Look at everybody. Look at all the money we're making. And so for these people that are working for large corporations like the Amazons and the tech lords and, the Walmarts and the big chain stores, if you keep shopping there, they will continue to treat you poorly, pay you poorly, and keep all the profits. I, as a matter of fact, go to smaller grocery stores when I can find them. I try to go to food, what's the word I'm looking for, like farmers markets, things like that when they're available. And I buy cheaper cuts of meat. And as a matter of fact, I went to a smaller grocery store, and I'm not going to say the name because I don't want anybody else going there and buying them out of crap. And then my price goes up. But I bought 18 eggs for like $3.89. I think $3.89 today. And I buy top sirloin instead of New York strip. Top sirloin's this is actually from a much bigger chunk of meat. And I just cut the top sirloin into 3 pieces and marinate it really good. And this has been actually cooked in bacon fat. And it gives me an amazing steak. This was $7.99 a pound. Like, it's out there. Just get away from the big chain stores. And so people that are shopping at big chains, working at big chain stores or big corporations and feel like they're not getting paid enough, well, instead of working for them, working for the smaller businesses. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because I understand when people say, oh, I don't like my corporation, they're not paying me enough and they're overworking me and things. Go look for another job. But to start whining about it on social media and crying about social media and quiet quitting, which is doing the least amount of job, or just flat out resigning before you have another job lined up, this is where you're going to be. I'm not going to read through the full articles here, but this is just from August. I think this one's from August. Yeah, August 15th of just this last year. So about 5-6 months ago. What is quiet quitting? Inside the work trend taking over TikTok. It's all about setting clear work-life boundaries. And they're saying, I'm not going to do overtime, even if I'm paid for it. I'm going to put in the bare minimum. Well, those people got laid off recently. What about this one? The bug pushed people to reevaluate their jobs. Meet 5 who reinvented themselves. And they call it the Great Resignation. 4.4 million U.S. workers quit their jobs each month in 2021. So 12 times almost 5? That's almost 60 million people. I mean, well, what are the results of that? Right here from today, right? Today's the 2nd? Yes, 2nd. 80% of workers who quit in the Great Resignation have regrets. No regrets, according to a new survey. This is the entitlement, the spoiled brats. And yeah, I'm going to call you a spoiled brat because, look, I worked as a dishwasher, got paid minimum wage, which back in the day was $5.25. I did it so I could make my car payment of my little Honda Civic, and it was a like $12,000 car new. I bought it with no power, anything, no radio. I especially ordered it with as basic as it could be, but I knew Hondas were pretty reliable. Drove that car for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. Cost me 12 or 13 grand. So the payment was like, I don't know, $270 a month. I worked as a dishwasher to pay that. Did dishwashing suck? Yes. Did I feel I needed more money for such a crappy job? Yes. So what did I do about it? I kept washing dishes and looked for another job. And then when I found another job where I could get $7-8 an hour, I took that. And I worked that, and I still felt I was worth more. And then I moved up to a sales position, and then I moved up to assistant manager, and then I moved up to manager. See, everybody today has this feeling like they're entitled, that they should just show up and get the big paycheck because they're fresh off the college express or whatever. That's not how things work in tough times. You know, sometimes you have to take less than you're worth and work a tougher job than you're worth. That's how things go. They say here 80% of workers regret leaving. The great regret is the latest workplace trend to sweep the nation, with a majority of professionals who quit their jobs last year wishing they could get a do-over, according to a new survey. 2022 was another record year for quitting. 4.1 million workers left their jobs in December alone, bringing the grand total for the year to over 50 million people quitting their jobs. So I don't know if they had good savings and maybe stiffened up the bank account and they were getting money from the government, you know, during the bug and everything, and they had good savings, and they said, all right, I'm going to live off my savings while I look for a new job. All you're doing is playing musical chairs at that point. You know, that's not that many positions to be had. And then, of course, every time those people go back to work, President Houseplant's like, oh, look at all the people entering the workforce. Yeah, but they left too, dimwit. They say roughly 47 million quit the year before. So that's 97 million in the last 2 years out of 300 and 30 million Americans. And that's including children, citing higher pay and better working conditions as incentives for their exits. Well, when you have 100 million people leaving jobs and 100 million roles that need to be filled, do you think they're just going to magically increase? Of course not. Do I think that people are underpaid? I think many of them are, but there's also a lot of people that are being incredibly overpaid. The money is ending up in the wrong hands, but this is what happens when you gut the middle class. You have small companies that can't pay very much, and you have these big maniacal corporations that can pay a ton but won't, except unless you get in very certain positions. And so this is what happens when you hollow out the middle class. A lot of small businesses and medium-sized businesses, even some large businesses, closed because of the lockdowns, you know, because of the requirements that the government put on them. And they're gone. They're gone. They say now 8 out of 10 professionals who left their jobs regret the decision. I'm sorry, it's funny. Paychex surveyed 825 employees who quit during the Great Resignation and 354 employers to analyze the impact of the quit spree and gauge employees' job satisfaction. They found that mental health, work-life balance, workplace relationships, and the chance to get rehired all suffered as a result. But here's the thing. Okay, I get work-life balance. I really do. I was a network engineer. I got paid 120 grand. I've said it many times, 122 grand a year. My work-life balance was not great. I was at AIS, which is ass in seat, at roughly, 7:45 in the morning, and sometimes I didn't leave till after 6:30 p.m. And you might say, well, there's no work-life balance. Yeah, but there's a big paycheck balance. You want good work-life balance? Work a job where you don't work as many hours and you get a lot less money. You know, I agree that I don't think it's fair that you should work your life away. You know, the idea of working really hard from the age of 18 till 65, and then you can finally stop quitting. It sucks. I get it. You know, but the problem is that, again, by gutting the middle class and the big corporations having all the power, you don't have a lot of options for places to work, and so they can control the market. And if you say, oh, let's raise the minimum wage to $25 or $30 an hour, okay, if that's the minimum, what about the person that's out there making 50, 60 grand a year as, an EMT tech or a firefighter or a police officer or something else? Are you going to give them a raise in unison? Do they get more money? Because if the answer is no, then they'll just quit being a cop and go serve fast food for a stress-free, easy work-life balance. making $30 an hour. Now you have no more cops or no more firefighters. And if you say, well, okay, we'll pay them more too, and all the salaries go up, guess what happens? Inflation goes up, the price of everything goes up, and now $25 an hour is the new $7 an hour. It doesn't get you ahead. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying I have answers, but I can tell you this. Just rage quitting is not going to solve your problems. It's really not. And the other thing, too, is like workplace relationships. You know, your mental health. This is a job. This isn't a preschool. This isn't a kindergarten where they're going to hold your hand, make you feel good about yourself, make sure that there's, free candy bars in the break room. Go there, do your job, go home. But again, everybody's entitled and everybody's soft and everybody's special and I need the most and not going to work out well for you. And yeah, it's kind of hard words to hear, but man, I've been in the workforce for many, many, many decades. The guys that always seem to do well and get ahead are the guys that bust their tail. They do really well. They get enough money behind them and they start their own business. They start their own enterprise. They go out and do something unique. As long as you're working for other people, you're not going to really get that far ahead in life unless you're, in the top 10% or whatever. All the people that I know that have been very successful and have done well for themselves have scraped enough money and then gone out on their own venture, started their own whatever business. And that's why the middle, the kind of the mid-range of jobs, the small and medium businesses that keep our country so strong, without them around, that's why we're struggling right now. So that means work hard, scrape some money together, and strike out on your own. And if you don't know what you want to do, I get that. It just means keep working and saving until you do figure out something you want to do, and then branch out a little bit. Follow your passions a bit. They say Gen Zers are struggling the most, again, because they're the most, I would say, mentally and emotionally fragile. According to Paychex, Gen Z workers reminisce about their old jobs the most. A whopping 89% of Gen Zers say they regret quitting, and as a result, their mental health is on the decline. The Great Resignation has led to much regret by employees seeking new opportunities. Among those regrets, employees were the most to miss their coworkers. Jeff Williams, Vice President and Enterprise of HR Solutions at Paychex, tells CNBC, "Make it. These friendships create a sense of community among employees, creating a positive company culture, another thing employees missed about their previous jobs." Our research found that 9 in 10 people reported changing industries after they resigned, and professionals who changed industries were 25% more likely than workers who remained in the same industry to regret their choices. Gen Zers were the most likely to miss working in the office, and Gen Xers missed the work-life balance from their previous jobs the most. When I worked in corporate and when I had many jobs that I really enjoyed, I liked my coworkers. I liked my job. Sometimes the paycheck was good. So other times it wasn't so good. But one of the things that made the job good was my coworkers, was the camaraderie that you had. So I do understand that. And then all of a sudden everybody's working from home and then you get the work-life balance of, I get to just chill at my house all day with my dog and I work online and I do my work and I hang out with my friends. But the problem is I have a feeling, because I know this was true with my company, that the good employees still did their work. The bad employees sloughed off. They weren't as responsible, and the company suffered. And how did they correct this issue? Instead of saying to the bad employees, you need to come into the office more, they'd say to the bad employees, you need to come into the office more. And then they'd look at the good employees and say, and you need to come into the office to help them. And we all got punished. So, what's the answer to this? I don't know. I really don't. But I can tell you this, crying and whining and rage quitting and thinking that you're top dog in the world and you deserve everything and you miss all your besties at work, like you got to toughen up a little bit. You've got to toughen up a little bit. Life is not just going to pat you on the back and coddle you along like you got all the way through school. It sets young people up for failure. And I blame the system. I mean, I do blame lazy young people. But again, if you've been told you're special and you're wonderful and don't worry about whatever other people think of you and, you're your own snowflake, you're going to grow up and you're going to melt when the heat gets applied. They see seemingly the job perks, benefits, and culture that cause young workers to join the Great Resignation aren't enough to keep them satisfied. Despite satisfaction with mental health and work-life balance influencing many resignations, only about half of the respondents from our survey said they are satisfied with their mental health and work-life balance, 54% and 43%, in their new workplace. Unfortunately, Gen Zers reported the lowest levels of positive mental health and work-life balance. And why is this? Again, because they were told the world is yours on an oyster, go get a college degree and everything will be fine. And then they got into the real world and they're like, wait, I was lied to. This is BS. And, you know, you're going to have to be forged in a fire to toughen up a little bit, I think. They say no loyalty, no leeway. While the majority of employers say they're open to rehiring job hoppers, some are more hesitant, questioning the loyalty of boomerang employees. When asked if they would be willing to rehire employees that left during the Great Resignation, 27% of employees said yes, or 27% of employees say yes. That doesn't make sense. I think they meant employers there. When asked if they would be willing to rehire employees that left during the Great Resignation, 27% of employees said yes. See, that doesn't make sense. 27% of employers said yes, and that they've already rehired at least one former employee. 43% said yes, but they have yet to rehire, and 30% said no. So most people, it sounds like, can go back to their jobs. Maybe they'll get lucky enough to get the same amount of money. Maybe they might get a little bit more. And unfortunately, we live in a culture today where I've worked for a company and I said, hey, I've been here, whatever, a year or two. I'm doing a great job. My metrics are all top of the board. I want a raise. And they'll go, well, here's 3%. I'm like, that's not even inflation. Like, you got to do better. And they say no. And then I go to a competitor and I get, a 30 or 40% raise on my salary, work over there for a few years, and then go back to the original place and go, well, they're paying me. I did that all the time. I hate to say that that's and whose fault is that? It's not the employees, it's the employers. We've got a problem with big businesses. We've got a problem with these stocks or these companies that keep saying, oh, the stock's got to increase. We've always got to grow. We've always got to show profit more and more and more and more. You can't live in a more and more society or the employees are going to suffer. So again, I don't blame the employees for walking away, but I do blame them for doing it and rage quitting before they had another job lined up, before they had kind of sussed things out and make sure it was going to work for them. And now crying about it and whining and, oh, my mental health and, oh, it's your fault. You did it to yourselves. Anecdotally, we believe that more employers than ever are open-minded to the idea of boomerang employees returning to companies, Williams explains. Tight labor markets, specialized skills, time to performance, and knowing the quality of work expected are all cited as reasons by hiring managers. Those with hesitancy to rehire highlight loyalty, expected compensation, and underlying suspicion of the employee's motives. Many employers either want to give or have given people their jobs back, with medium-sized businesses the most likely to have done so already. Again, medium-sized, not the big megalomaniacal corporations. But for others, workplace loyalty seems to keep employers from welcoming them back at all. Returning employees received a 7% raise, but 38% of employers were unwilling to offer new benefits to former employees. Nearly a third of employers won't consider giving people their jobs back, and blue-collar employers are 17% more likely than white-collar employers to feel this way. And again, I don't have an answer for this, and I know it sucks. Keep sliding out of center here on my camera. I know it sucks. And I don't blame people to say, oh, the raises aren't keeping up with inflation and corporations. But the problem is that right now the corporations hold the strength. When there's bad times and companies are laying off and there's not many positions and there's a lot of people that are unemployed, the businesses have the power because they know there's a lot of people to fill those roles. Now, previously, in the good old days, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when the inflation was basically at zero, or excuse me, not inflation, when the interest rate was at zeros, employees could ask for more. That companies were trying to hire as many people as they could, and employees could be a little bit greedier. Times change, incomes change, the amount of work you have to do changes. But I'll tell you this, working for big companies is probably the worst way to go. And the other thing is, I would say if they aren't offering you enough, don't work for them. I mean, unless you really, really need to because you've run out of money, then obviously you're going to have to do something. But, find something that will compensate you fairly. And if the workers can outlast the employers suffering without the employees, then the workers gain the strength. But the problem, and normally I'd say, well, you could look into unions, but the problem with the unions is by the time you pay for the unions dues and all the collective bargaining and everything else that happens, you might get a huge pay raise, but by the time you've paid your unions and pay your taxes and everything else, you're almost making what you would make without the unions involved at all. Like I said, I don't have the answer, but rage quitting is not it. They say it's natural to spend time reliving the good old days, but Williams advises workers to not dwell on the past for too long. Nostalgia is the enemy of growth. Be realistic and move on if your former employer won't rehire you. Recognize your value, be confident in who you are, and move forward. As employees figure out how to turn over a new leaf, Williams suggests start over with a fresh perspective about what you can control. And I would say that's the big thing is don't be worried about work for friends or companionship or mental health, or worry about how many hours am I working? Can I do the job? Is the compensation fair? Those are the three things you need to worry. I mean, commuting distance, things like that. But I even told an employer that I was working for a while, and it was actually the job that I worked at last. I said to them, look, when you originally hired me, you said I could work from home 4 days a week, come into the office 1. I've got a 45-minute commute with traffic. It's an hour. I said, that's 2 extra hours every day I'm working. And they forced us. My poor camera. I don't know why this does this. My poor camera, it just keeps fitzing out on me. The software is not working well with Windows, I guess. I said, look, I used to be able to be home. Now you've got me driving an extra 4 days a week into the office. That's 8 extra hours every week. I am not at home. I want to be compensated for that. And we went back and forth, and I got a raise because they wanted me in the office. Know your value, stick up to your guns, but again, worry about compensation, hours worked, can I do the job? Don't be worrying about, friendship and work environment and mental health. I mean, you got to like the job well enough for the compensation. But sometimes, even if you hate the job, if the compensation's enough and you have enough, free time to kind of de-stress and unwind, you'll be okay. I don't feel sorry for people that do this to themselves because they didn't have to do it to themselves. I know it's not a great work environment out there. I know salaries are way low. I know corporations are keeping and making way too much money, and the CEOs and fat cats and the oligarchs and all the other things we can bitch about are keeping all the money. But unfortunately, in the world we live in, you got to put your nose to the grindstone and at least make enough to get by. At least make enough to maybe save some scratch and then better yourself. Whether it's with offline or online training, whether it's an apprenticeship, whether it's changing jobs, maybe stretching your expertise, because every job gives you on-the-job training, so you can stretch your expertise. And most of the time, if you're an intelligent person, you can walk into a job that's not, being a doctor or a lawyer or something. You can stretch your resume a little bit, get into the position, and then you'll grow into it. I've done that in multiple jobs as well. I mean, matter of fact, when I went to go do this network engineering job that I had to sit down and look and memorize the OSI tables and, study up on what a bunch of, I was studying like I was graduating from college for like a month and a half, 2 months to try to enter the work world that I wanted to enter. And the only experience I had was Linux. And I wasn't even a certified Linux admin. I just knew Linux pretty well. That and studying, various networking stuff got my foot in the door. And then from there, it was on-the-job training. And the next job I jumped into wasn't really qualified for that, but I got my foot in the door, on-the-job training. The crying and the whining and all the bitching and moaning over quitting what you had that was good and worrying about your mental health and everything else, you got to forget about that. Worry about your compensation. Worry about how things are going. Move on with your life because things are still going to be tough. That's not going to change. Guys, again, if you're on YouTube, please either join me on Rumble or join me on Locals. Rumble gets the same stuff I put up here over on YouTube. but it's going to start getting more if YouTube just keeps like whacking me with the Nerf bat here. I just cannot put up, I'm not going to let YouTube run ads on my stuff and they keep the money and not compensate me for it. I mean, like, even if I weren't getting compensated, like I'd at least turn off monetization on the videos and be like, all right, well, I'll just put it on YouTube. And then as advertising to come on over to Locals or something, or go over to Rumble where I can make a couple of bucks for my work. But what pisses me off that YouTube does is they'll demonetize something, then they still show ads on it. They keep all the money and they don't pay the content creator. How am I gonna rightfully work for somebody like that? They do this to me. You know, they really start lighting me up about once a year, and then I go on my tirade, and then everything seems to settle down. Well, they're back at it again, it seems, and every time it just pisses me off. So join me over on betterbachelor.locals.com. We got like 55,000 people over there, free speech forums. No advertisement on the videos. It's all good stuff. So I hope you join me over there today. And for those of you here on Locals that are supporters, I appreciate it very much, and we'll see you in the next one.